Merci et bonjour tout le monde. C'est vraiment un plaisir d'être ici avec mes collègues, avec les autres maires. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to be here with you today and with the mayors who make up FCM's Big City Mayors Caucus. Let me start by acknowledging the Algonquin Anishinaabe people as the traditional custodians of the unceded land upon which we are gathered. We deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. It's a great pleasure for the City of Ottawa to once again host the caucus of amazing city leaders from around the country. I want to welcome in particular the chair of our caucus, Mayor Mike Savage of Halifax, et bienvenue également à la mairesse de la ville de Gatineau, mon amie Madame France Bélisle. C'est un plaisir de vous recevoir tous deux ici à Ottawa. Les discussions que nous avons eues aujourd'hui se sont déjà avérées très productives et le moins qu'on puisse dire, c'est qu'elles tombent à point. Canada and Canadians are facing some real challenges. Access to housing, local infrastructure requiring new investment, and the effects of a changing climate. Those are just some of the topics that we're covering today, and I know this group of leaders will be instrumental in driving national solutions through local action. That's what the Big City Mayors Caucus does. That is what the Federation of Canadian Municipalities does. Ensemble, nous sommes la voix des citoyens que nous représentons d'un bout à l'autre du pays. So, without further ado, I'd like to now turn things over to Mayor Savage to speak about the work of the caucus. Mayor Savage.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Je suis très heureux d'être ici avec mes collègues aujourd'hui. Thank you, Mayor Sutcliffe. It's a great pleasure to be back here in Ottawa, and congratulations to you on your role as Mayor of Ottawa. We all look forward to working with you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Savage. I'm the Mayor of Halifax and Chair of FCM's Big City Mayors Caucus. I'm also pleased to be joined today by another colleague, la mairesse de Gatineau, France Bélisle. Our caucus is meeting today as FCM kicks off its annual advocacy days, when municipal leaders and federal counterparts meet to discuss our shared priorities as a nation. We all know the challenges that Canadians face: the rising cost of living, the prolonged housing crisis, and extreme weather events due to changing climate. But with challenges come opportunity, and we believe that there is reason for optimism. For example, Canada now has a framework for a national strategy for climate adaptation, something that the Big City Mayors Caucus has long advocated for. From wildfires to storms, extreme weather events are more frequent and devastating to our communities. I know that as we experienced Hurricane Fiona this year on the East Coast. Climate change is real. It has real concrete effects on our lives, our families, and our local economies. The new National Adaptation Strategy recognizes the importance of working with municipalities and takes positive steps to increase much-needed support. Of course, the scope of the issue is larger than our current available tools. We know this, and we know that this government gets that, and we're calling for increased support for the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund in Budget 2023 to help more communities meet the climate challenge. We're also here today to advance an important discussion around a key priority for Canadians, and something that I can tell you keeps mayors awake at night: addressing housing affordability and homelessness. As municipal leaders, we know all too well that having a safe and affordable place to call home is a pressing concern for many, in fact, in some cases, most Canadians. Cities across the country are doing their part to expand the right kind of housing supply, including for the most vulnerable Canadians. But we know that more needs to be done, and we cannot do it alone. Earlier this year, the federal government announced the $4 billion Housing Accelerator Fund as part of the federal budget. Now, as the order of government closest to the local needs, we know this. The Housing Accelerator Fund has the potential to deliver real housing progress. It offers direct and flexible investments. It could also empower municipalities to tackle the barriers to supply, like access to financing, the availability and the cost of land, and the regulations to review and approve development applications. But for the Housing Accelerator Fund to drive transformative outcomes, it needs to be designed directly with cities, and it needs to be launched soon. Cities are on the front lines of the housing challenge, and every mayor in our caucus could tell you about the work they're undertaking to address this challenge in their own communities. From material costs to labor shortages to infrastructure in need of upgrades with few resources to do so, the challenges on the housing file are deep and they're complex. Now is the time that we must work together, not in opposition, on this challenge. And local decision-making and expertise must be central to that effort. And of course, we can't talk about housing without also touching on chronic homelessness in Canada. The needs are real, and we know that as much as a goal is important, it needs to be important for the federal government as it is for us. We're advocating for a scaling up of important programs like Reaching Home and the Rapid Housing Initiative as a marker of ambition to really get focused on the homelessness crisis in our country. Getting it right on housing isn't just to meet the basic need of every Canadian to have a safe and affordable place to call home. It is crucial to building flourishing communities. Progress on housing is directly related to progress on transit, on reducing emissions, and making sure that we have the core infrastructure that we need. Speaking of infrastructure, our conversations today are looking closely at the next generation of infrastructure in our country. To build the kinds of neighborhoods that Canadians expect, we need investments to intersect with the goal of building and greening our communities. As I've already said, municipalities just can't do it on our own. 60% of all public infrastructure in Canada is managed by municipalities. The next federal budget is a key opportunity to build Canada up. By doubling the Canada Community Building Fund and working with cities on the next generation of infrastructure funding, the federal government can drive permanent and predictable core infrastructure renewal in alignment with local needs. We're looking forward to more productive discussions with our federal peers today and in the months to come. Our local governments are working together effectively with other orders of government, which we must do if we're going to improve the lives of all Canadians. I'd now like to turn it over to France Bélisle of Gatineau.
Merci, Mike. Bonjour à tous. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here and flattered to be the French spokesperson today. Je suis très heureuse d'être ici. Merci beaucoup. Merci, Mike. Merci, Mark. Je m'appelle France Bélisle, je suis la mairesse de Gatineau et membre aussi du caucus des maires des grandes villes de la Fédération canadienne des municipalités. Notre caucus est réuni aujourd'hui alors que la FCM donne le coup d'envoi à des journées annuelles de défense, mais aussi de promotion des intérêts au cours desquels les dirigeants de nos villes et leurs homologues fédéraux se rencontrent pour discuter de nos priorités communes. Nous connaissons tous les défis auxquels les Canadiens et les Canadiennes sont confrontés, y compris l'augmentation du coût de la vie, la crise du logement, les phénomènes météo extrêmes dus au changement climatique. Vous n'êtes pas sans savoir que Gatineau y a aussi goûté. Bien sûr, il y a des défis, mais il y a aussi des possibilités et nous pensons que nous avons raison d'être optimistes. Par exemple, le Canada dispose désormais d'un cadre pour une stratégie nationale d'adaptation au changement climatique, ce que le caucus des maires des grandes villes préconise et demande depuis longtemps. Des feux de forêt aux tempêtes, les phénomènes météo extrêmes sont malheureusement dévastateurs pour nos collectivités. Les changements climatiques sont réels, ils ont des effets concrets sur nos vies, sur nos familles et sur les économies locales. Cette nouvelle stratégie nationale d'adaptation reconnaît l'importance de travailler avec les municipalités et elle prévoit aussi un soutien nécessaire. On s'en va dans le bon sens. Bien entendu, l'ampleur du problème dépasse les outils dont on dispose à l'heure actuelle.
Nous savons que ce gouvernement en est conscient et nous demandons un soutien accru au Fonds d'adaptation et d'atténuation en matière de catastrophes dans le budget 2023 afin d'aider davantage les collectivités à relever les défis que présentent les changements climatiques. Nous sommes également ici aujourd'hui pour faire avancer une discussion importante autour d'une grande priorité pour les Canadiens, le caractère abordable du logement et aussi la question de l'itinérance. Les dirigeants municipaux savent malheureusement trop bien qu'avoir un endroit sûr et abordable pour se loger est une préoccupation urgente pour un très grand nombre de citoyens. Les villes, partout au pays, prennent des mesures pour accroître l'offre de logement, y compris celle pour les citoyens les plus vulnérables. Mais nous savons qu'il faut en faire plus, et on ne peut pas le faire seul. Plus tôt cette année, dans le cadre du budget fédéral, le gouvernement fédéral a annoncé un fonds de 4 milliards de dollars pour accélérer la construction de logements. En tant que gouvernement municipal, proche des besoins locaux, nous savons que le Fonds pour accélérer la construction de logements a le potentiel de mener à de véritables progrès en matière d'habitation. Il propose des investissements directs et flexibles. Il pourrait aussi habiliter les municipalités à s'attaquer aux obstacles de la construction de logements. Par exemple, l'accès au financement, la disponibilité et le coût des terrains, Gatineau le sait trop bien, ainsi que les réglementations relatives à l'examen et à l'approbation des demandes d'aménagement sur notre territoire. Pour que le Fonds d'accélération à la construction de logements produise des résultats et apporte des changements significatifs, il doit être conçu entre le gouvernement fédéral et les villes. Il doit aussi être lancé rapidement et on doit le développer ensemble. Les villes sont en première ligne du problème lié à la crise du logement et tous les maires de notre caucus pourraient vous parler du travail qu'ils entreprennent tous les jours pour relever ce défi. Qu'il s'agisse du coût des matériaux, de la pénurie de main-d'œuvre, des infrastructures à moderniser avec peu de ressources pour le faire. Les défis à relever dans le domaine du logement sont profonds et ils sont aussi complexes. Le moment est venu de travailler ensemble et non en opposition. Les décisions et l'expertise locale doivent être au cœur de ces efforts. Et bien sûr, il nous est impossible de parler de logement sans aborder également la triste question, mais inquiétante question de l'itinérance. Les besoins sont réels et nous savons que c'est un objectif aussi bien pour le fédéral que pour les villes. Nous plaidons en faveur d'un renforcement des programmes importants comme Vers un chez-soi et l'initiative pour la création rapide de logements afin de montrer notre volonté de nous attaquer à l'itinérance dans nos communautés. Faire le bon choix en matière de logement, ce n'est pas seulement répondre aux besoins fondamentaux de chaque Canadien d'avoir un endroit sûr et abordable où habiter. C'est aussi essentiel à la construction de collectivités florissantes et au développement économique. Les progrès en matière de logement sont directement liés aux progrès en matière de transport en commun, de réduction des émissions et de mise en place des infrastructures de base. En parlant d'infrastructures, nos conversations d'aujourd'hui portent sur la prochaine génération d'infrastructures au Canada. Pour bâtir le genre de quartier auquel les Canadiens s'attendent, nous devons faire en sorte que les investissements soient harmonisés avec l'objectif de bâtir et de rendre nos collectivités écologiques. Mais comme je l'ai déjà dit, les municipalités ne peuvent pas faire ça toutes seules. Nous savons que 60% de toutes les infrastructures publiques du Canada sont gérées par les villes. Le prochain budget fédéral constitue une excellente occasion de construire le Canada. En doublant le Fonds pour le développement des collectivités du Canada et en travaillant avec les villes sur la prochaine génération de financement des infrastructures, le gouvernement fédéral peut favoriser le renouvellement permanent, mais aussi prévisible des infrastructures de base en fonction des besoins locaux. On est impatient d'avoir des discussions plus productives avec nos homologues fédéraux. On a d'ailleurs commencé ce matin et ça va se poursuivre aujourd'hui et aussi dans les mois à venir. Les gouvernements municipaux collaborent de façon très efficace avec les autres paliers de gouvernement et c'est ce que nous devons faire si nous voulons améliorer la qualité de vie de chacun des citoyens dans nos communautés. Merci beaucoup.
Nous allons maintenant passer à la période des questions. If you'd like to ask a question, please come to the microphone, identify your name and the media you represent, and also the
Hi, bonjour, Jean-François Dugas du journal Le Droit. First general question, I heard that there was like $4 billion for infrastructure in that program. There was also, you're looking to bonifier some programs and all that. Are you looking for money or more involvement with the government in helping you help with the infrastructure and the climate change and all and the lodging? So there's like two fronts for anybody, anyways.
So if the $4 billion that you're talking about, is that the Housing Accelerator Fund? Right. So the government announced in the last election that they would have a Housing Accelerator Fund that would assist municipalities directly in producing supply of new housing. They put $4 billion in the budget this year, and we don't know all of the details on it. We know that it's coming out. We met with Minister Hussein just now to talk about the importance of cities being involved, and FCM had been directly involved in making suggestions as to how the Housing Accelerator Fund can be put together. We're very optimistic, but two things. We want to make sure that our needs are wrapped up in that fund, and secondly, we want to have it come out pretty quickly. You know, we need housing supply in this country. We need housing supply in this country now. And we don't want to just confuse supply with homelessness. We need direct money for homelessness, as we've talked about with the Rapid Housing Initiative, Reaching Home, and other initiatives. But on the Housing Accelerator Fund, it's $4 billion. It will be to directly support municipalities, maybe going from sort of manual to digital planning. It may be to help us hire more planners to get work out the door more quickly. There may be some other ways that it can be used. It's a significant amount of money. It is another way that the federal government is showing that they're going to work directly with municipalities to assist in the challenges that we all face. And so we think it's very welcome. We just want to see the details, and we want to see it soon.
I'll go French this time. Peut-être Mme Bélisle and Mr. Sutcliffe. Vu qu'il y a les deux maires de la région de la capitale nationale sont ici, est-ce qu'il y a des enjeux particuliers pour la région ici que vous avez parlé avec vos homologues fédéraux, que ce soit l'infrastructure, l'itinérance ou autres projets? Y a-t-il quelque chose que vous recherchez particulièrement?
En fait, je pense que les préoccupations, on les partage tous aujourd'hui, pas nécessairement qu'on soit du Québec ou de l'Ontario ou du Manitoba, peu importe. Je vous dirais, puis j'en ai discuté aussi avec M. Sutcliffe la semaine dernière, la question du logement est une question essentielle qui frappe toutes les villes et toutes les régions du pays. Cet élément-là est vraiment crucial. On est aussi très préoccupé par les infrastructures qu'on a à entretenir, mais les infrastructures aussi qu'on a à construire au sein de nos collectivités. Les besoins sont majeurs. On peut parler d'infrastructures en matière d'eau potable, par exemple. Donc, ce sont des éléments qui sont vraiment très importants. Et dans le fond, Gatineau et Ottawa, nos voix s'ajoutent à celles du caucus des grandes villes de l'ensemble du pays parce que les besoins, on les partage, les défis, on les partage. Par contre, la façon dont les programmes sont appliqués dans nos villes, c'est là où c'est intéressant d'avoir des discussions avec le gouvernement fédéral. Vous me passerez une expression, mais le « one size fits all » commande aussi qu'on ait des discussions pour être capable de faire une adaptation des programmes qui est capable de répondre aux différentes collectivités canadiennes. Une ville de Gatineau, comme Gatineau, par exemple, de 300 000, n'est pas une ville de 50 000 habitants au pays. Pourtant, on partage des défis qui sont similaires, mais les façons d'être capable d'y répondre peuvent être différentes. Merci.
Pas beaucoup d'ajouter, mais je suis ravi de travailler ensemble avec la mairesse de Gatineau et je pense, comme Mme Bélisle a dit, que les problèmes, les enjeux ici, les défis dans la région de la capitale nationale sont les mêmes défis pour tous les maires partout au Canada, mais je pense que nous avons eu une bonne réunion la semaine passée et nous espérons de travailler ensemble pour engager avec le gouvernement fédéral. Merci.
Hi, Stephanie Levis, the Toronto Star. It's a question for Mayor Savage and also you, Mayor Sutcliffe, because I'd like to hear you both address this issue of the power of the mayor. Mayor Savage, in Nova Scotia, you have a piece of provincial legislation that is designed, I think, Bill 225, that's supposed to give the province some veto power as it relates to housing, for example. Conversely, here in Ontario, Mayor Sutcliffe, we have the strong mayor powers that Doug Ford is trying to give you in order to speed up housing construction. So there's obviously a tension happening somewhere that people think housing is not getting built, and either it's the mayor's fault or the mayor needs more power. Which is it, in your view?
Well, I think across the country you're seeing the issue of housing supply as a big issue. And it is a big issue. I personally think it's a great mistake to suggest that it is municipalities who are at fault. In Halifax, for example, we have tens of thousands of approved building lots that could be built on, but rising interest rates, supply chain issues, the high cost of labor has meant that we have not had as many housing units built as we need. We're a fast-growing city. I believe in cities. I think around the world, I was at COP27 in Egypt, had a chance to meet a number of mayors, and I think that it is cities who are leading the charge. And I think that cities have the solutions. We are, by our very nature, problem solvers. Mayors are problem solvers. And I always tell people, mayors are idealistic, but we're not ideological. We don't go to the dogmas of our political parties. We come up with answers at the ground level. We're entirely willing to work with provincial governments and share the concerns that we have and the concerns they have and come up with some ideas. In the province of Nova Scotia, for example, Bill 225 that you referred to is a very draconian piece of legislation which relates to an issue that really will have very little to do with increasing the supply of housing. We'll work with the provincial government. We've indicated that. We've worked with them on some things that they've bought in that we didn't like, but said let's work together on this, similar to what they have in Ontario with the MZOs. They've come into Nova Scotia. We'll work with the provincial governments. Because at the end of the day, it's not about jurisdiction. It's about the problems that exist at the ground level. And cities are very conscious of that. And I couldn't care less. We're doing things on homelessness, putting money into them with strapped municipal budgets, because that's what has to happen, even though it's not our jurisdiction. So I just think that these are all solvable. We'd like to have the same relationship with all of our provincial governments. Some municipalities have them, that we have with the feds, where we can sit down and sort these problems out. Because at the end of the day, people have no time for jurisdiction. If you're homeless, you need a roof. You don't need governments bickering about whose responsibility it is. It's all of our responsibility.
What's your take, Mayor Sutcliffe?
Sure. So as Mayor Savage said, I think clearly everyone agrees we need to build more homes. I campaigned on a commitment to build 100,000 homes in Ottawa over the next 10 years. That's an ambitious target, but I think we can achieve it. And what's appealing to me, what's exciting to me, is that obviously the provincial and federal governments also see this as a priority. So everybody is trying to do what they can to remove barriers to getting more homes built. And not everyone may agree on the best way to remove those barriers, what some of the barriers are, or how they should be addressed. But what I'm seeing is a lot of energy. As was mentioned, we met with the housing minister, the federal housing minister, earlier today. I see a lot of energy around the idea of let's find creative ways to remove obstacles and build more homes in Canada. And so I'm excited as a newly elected mayor that we're going to have the cooperation of the federal and provincial governments to get that done.
And then I guess just on my follow-up, I'll touch on the issue of homelessness. There was a federal auditor general's report, I think it was last week, it might have been the week before, that said nobody's keeping track of whether the billions of dollars the federal government is pouring into addressing chronic homelessness is actually solving the problem. There's no data collection. And again, I wonder from the point of view of the mayors, who owns that? I mean, we talk about, you guys talk about solutions, working with the federal government, but if all this money is going out the door for infrastructure, for homelessness, and no one is tracking or paying attention to the extent at which it's actually working, who's responsible for that at the end of the day?
Well, we all are. In Halifax, for example, we've recently set up a system of surveillance of homeless populations because we have people living in encampments, we have people who are living day to day, and that's a really important piece, is to understand the problem. For a long time, we didn't have a national housing strategy in Canada. We do now. For a long time in Nova Scotia, there weren't investments in affordable housing. And so I think that to go to jurisdiction. We all have to figure this piece out together. And I can tell you that when you address homelessness through something like the Rapid Housing Initiative, it is very trackable. And you know, the feds are responsible for the money that they give to municipalities. We then work with our provincial governments. In Halifax, we've created 130 new housing homes for people, housing units for people who don't have very much. So I think there are ways to track these and make sure that the money is being well spent. And I would not want to see governments not put money into homelessness because we can't figure out a way to track where it's going. We just got to track it.
Could keep going.
Additional questions? All right, this is the end of our press conference. Merci beaucoup à tous d'être venus. Et ici, c'est la fin de la conférence de presse. Thanks.
Merci.
Merci.